So I don't normally talk about rumors when it comes to the iPhone, but a couple have been floating around recently that have really intrigued me. One in particular, and it's new. The other one's been around for a while. And so today I'm going to get into that and talk a little bit about LumaFusion and the iPad Pro. Hey guys, Blake Calhoun, and another episode of Almost Professional, the podcast about mobile filmmaking, DIY filmmaking, indie filmmaking, really all things filmmaking. And today, talking about a rumor that I heard recently, and I believe I read it on Forbes, and so not some Twitter handle or website with like 3 followers. A mainstream publication came out and said that Apple was going to be including ProRes in the iPhone 13 or whatever they call it. It could be the iPhone 12s. The main improvements are going to come in the camera, which is a big selling point for iPhones. And so that's not surprising. But what is surprising is, number one, a non-techie site would talk about ProRes and that Apple is actually going to do it. Now, I say actually going to do it. We don't know that for sure, but this seemed to be very credible to me. And so I actually, for once, believe it. Like with the 10-bit video last year, that kind of came out about this time, and sure enough, it happened. And so I believe that ProRes is coming to the iPhone 13. Now, if I'm wrong, that's the way it goes. For those that don't know what I'm talking about or what ProRes even is, it is Apple's professional video codec. It's been around for a long time, and it's the one thing that Apple did create in the professional video world that has become ubiquitous with professional video, whether you use Apple or not. Anytime you deliver a movie or anytime you deliver any kind of high-end, or even not even high-end, it could be corporate video, professional type project, you almost always deliver it in ProRes. ProRes HQ has been the going flavor for a long time for delivery, but there are a variety of different types of ProRes, and more or less it is the way video is encoded, not only when you're shooting, but when you're exporting. And so, for example, let's say you shoot in ProRes and then you edit in ProRes and you output in ProRes. And so it does a couple things. Now, by the way, I'm not an engineer and I'm not trying to be all engineer tech guy here. But as a filmmaker, this is good stuff to understand, just to have at least a general knowledge of why it's important. And so for me, not only is it a very efficient codec, it's a high quality codec that when you re-encode it or export it, you don't lose a lot of data. You don't lose a lot of information. It doesn't get noisy. The colors stay consistent because it is a 10-bit 422 color space. At least the flavors I'm talking about right now. Who knows what they do on the iPhone? Most likely it'll be a different flavor of ProRes for a variety of reasons. One, you're not shooting 422 color space on an iPhone, at least not at this point. You are shooting 10-bit, but it's 420 color space. Well, right now, of course, it's H.265. And so that could change with ProRes. Again, I'm not an engineer, so that is a possibility. But the biggest thing for me and for a lot of people is ProRes is very easy to edit. It doesn't tax your edit system, your computer, like a lot of these compressed formats like MPEG-4 or HEVC do. And so that's a big thing. Now, the flip side to that is usually the same type of 4K file will be a lot bigger when you use ProRes, when you shoot with ProRes. And so that would be the hiccup on an iPhone, is because you have limited storage capacity. And so it'll be interesting to see what Apple does. I would think they would use something like ProRes LT, which is like ProRes Lite, which runs at about 100 megabits per second, approximately. And that is what the higher end apps like Filmic Pro do whenever they're running Filmic Extreme, etc. Although they can get up to 150 megabits per second. The default iPhone app, as a comparison, usually shoots between 20 and 60 megabits per second. And so it'll be interesting to see if it's a constant bit rate using ProRes and if it's a higher bit rate. I don't know. Because again, storage is an issue with phones. And most likely, if they do implement this, this will only be on the Pro versions of the phone. Maybe even only on the Pro Max. Because we keep hearing rumors they're going to take away the Lightning port, which, that won't hurt my feelings. Especially if they replace it with a USB-C or a Thunderbolt. That would be awesome. Although, of course, if we do lose Lightning, then the audio gear we have won't work properly. And so that'll be another thing. But just like Apple does with everything else, there'll probably be a dongle of some kind to make all that legacy gear work. But that's a whole nother topic. Again, as a professional filmmaker, the idea of having ProRes in the palm of your hand is, man, that does change everything. And as a matter of fact, in 2019, I went to NAB and I spoke at the Filmic Pro booth. And that was really cool. And I met all the Filmic Pro guys in person, including their founder and CEO, Neil. And I did an interview with Neil. And one of the things he said was his dream is to have a larger phone that shoots ProRes. Here's what he said.
What I would love to see and have advocated for a handful of years is a slightly thicker iPhone with a larger sensor and 10-bit ProRes. So that, I think, would be the earth-shattering move that would send tremors through the industry.
Now, to me, Neil strikes me as a big picture guy, a dreamer, and that's kind of what I thought that was. And again, maybe it still is a dream. Maybe it won't happen. But the rumors are saying ProRes is coming to an iPhone. And so you combine that with the other rumor I keep hearing about, and that is depth of field simulation, portrait video, in other words, where you're shooting video that has shallow depth of field. iPhones have a small sensor, and so while you can get shallow depth of field shooting video, you usually got to be closer to a subject or using the telephoto lens. It doesn't act like a traditional camera because those camera sensors are much bigger, or that's one of the reasons anyway. But just like doing photography where we can knock the background out of focus, you'll be able to do that with video. And you can do that now with some apps, but it's limited and the results aren't great. They're okay. One in particular that does a pretty good job is ProTake, and the other one is called Focus Live. And those are both good apps, but if Apple implements this natively and then other third-party apps like Filmic Pro implement it, then we're talking, yeah, good stuff. So you add ProRes with shallow depth of field on a phone you carry in your pocket. That is pretty crazy. And I think you'll start seeing more and more people. And what I mean by that is professional naysayers, the guys who said they'll never use their phone other than to shoot behind the scenes or like a TikTok video, start using their phone. Because if Filmic Pro, and I'm sure they will, can add Log V3 with ProRes, I mean, it kind of boggles the mind what we'll be able to do with this small little device you carry in your pocket. It's exciting. It really is. And again, if you don't work in video and don't know what ProRes is, you may be thinking, well, I don't really get it. It really all comes down to creating more professional images, higher end images that really matter when you're doing higher end work, whether that's compositing or filmmaking, etc. It wouldn't make much difference, and you might not even want to choose it. I assume you'll be able to choose the codec if you're just doing a TikTok video. Nothing wrong with TikTok videos, but those are more DIY looking anyway, user-generated type content. But professionals want these type features, including the 10-bit video that came, and then potentially ProRes. Makes a big difference, and it's a pretty big deal. So I could see iPhones being used. They're used right now as B cameras on bigger shoots. especially insert shots or crash cam shots or being incognito somewhere like in a theme park or something. But by adding ProRes, this could even take that further. And so, yeah, it's exciting. Now, the other thing I wanted to talk about real quickly, and it ties into ProRes, is LumaFusion. LumaFusion just recently updated their app, and it's great, 3.0. And they have a Pro Pack coming, several Pro Packs. And one of the Pro Packs that Terry, the founder of LumaFusion, mentioned to me, she's the co-founder actually, was doing ProRes proxy editing on LumaFusion. And so now, if you didn't know, you can edit off SSDs, which is awesome. I've actually started editing a lot more with LumaFusion because of that. You don't have to import all the footage into your iPad anymore. But editing ProRes is another step in the right direction to making the iPad, along with the iPhone, more, what's the right way to say this, more widely used in professional filmmaking. Now, I know I kind of go between mobile filmmaking and professional filmmaking, meaning I know a lot of you guys that listen to this podcast and watch my YouTube channel, you guys are probably indie filmmakers. You might work in a day job doing whatever you do. It could be, accounting, insurance, whatever. And that's great. You don't quit your day job. So you use your phone to experiment, or you use it to make short films, or you use it for, of course, family videos like we all do, or again, social media. And that's great. That's a great way to use your phone. But I also try to look at ways to use these devices in professional scenarios that may or may not apply to what you do. Now, there are a lot of professionals that use their devices, in particular their iPad, but also their phone. Mobile journalists come to mind. But a lot of people use their iPad for editing and such. And then because you can edit in Luma and then take it into Final Cut Pro, you can use LumaFusion as an offline editor, which is what I do primarily. And then I finish it in Premiere Pro, actually, is what I do. You can take that file and convert it to Premiere Pro and open it there. And then, of course, you can also open it in DaVinci Resolve. And so using LumaFusion like that is a great way to go. Or now you could finish in it. And then especially if Apple adds ProRes to LumaFusion, then there really won't be as much of a reason to finish on your desktop, except for plugins and such. And or LumaFusion mentioned adding ProRes proxy editing. So for example, you shoot a project on a higher end camera in ProRes. Well, you take those clips, and then with proxy editing, I assume in LumaFusion, it would make proxies using MPEG-4. So proxies would be what you were editing with in LumaFusion, and then you would finish that or match back to that in ProRes for your final video. Now, we do that all the time, even on traditional computers, especially when you shoot something like with a high-end Arri or Red or Blackmagic camera, and you have tons of footage. You'll often transcode down to smaller files like ProRes LT or ProRes Proxy HD files for all your editing. You do your edit, and then you take that EDL or that sequence from whatever editing you're using. You can import that into DaVinci Resolve or whatever. You could stay in Premiere Pro or Final Cut Pro, relink back to your high res media, and then do your finishing, which would be your effects and your color and that kind of thing, and then export. So a lot of cool things around ProRes, whether it's the iPhone or LumaFusion and the iPad Pro, a lot of possibility there if they do add ProRes, they being Apple, or LumaFusion has said already, like I just mentioned, they're going to add ProRes proxy editing regardless. And so one way or another, we'll have ProRes abilities on the iPad Pro, and then hopefully we'll have it on the iPhone as well. So I hope this all made sense. A little bit of a rambling episode, as I often do. This is stream of consciousness. I don't make any notes. And so, again, I'm very excited about the idea of ProRes on the iPhone. And then, of course, Shadow DOF. And by the way, I don't care if it's simulated. Some people might be a purist and be like, well, I'd prefer to have this, that, or the other, making it real or organic depth of field. And that is cool. That's great. Don't get me wrong. But if you can do the same thing in your phone and no one can tell, again, the first generation of this probably isn't going to be great. You'll probably be able to have issues, especially with moving shots. But nonetheless, I'm all in on that and look forward to seeing how they implement it. And I hope it will come to third-party apps and such in the near future, or shortly after it's released via Apple. But of course, none of this could happen. All this could be rumor and maybe not happen, but these rumors seem to be pretty credible. And so I'll come back to this episode in another month or so once this stuff is released, and I will either praise this episode or delete it from the internet. Well, I'm very excited about this stuff, as you can probably tell, and I am going to implement a lot of this stuff into my courses, by the way, and I plan on doing a sale on my courses, a back to school sale. So if it's not running right now when you're listening to this, it will be, or if you're listening to this months down the road, it's probably not, but you should still check out my courses. I have one on Filmic Pro, I have one on LumaFusion color grading, another popular one on smartphone cinematography, learning the basics of how to use your phone to produce cinematic images. And the nice thing about that course is that that applies to shooting with traditional cameras as well. The framing, composition, lighting, that kind of thing. So you learn it once and you can take it across to whatever kind of camera you're using. I also have an audio course, which is all about smartphone audio, working with your smartphone or iPad as well. I should have said it's all about mobile audio. You can use both, but I tend to think of smartphones. But it's amazing what you can do. As a matter of fact, I'm recording my episode right now, this podcast, on my phone. Well, that's it for this episode. I do plan to do more podcasts, although every time I talk about doing more podcasts, then I get slow at doing them. I actually was on vacation for a little while in August of this year, and so that slowed me down, but I guess a lot of people are on vacation right now. Oh, and one last thing, I do have something really cool coming to my YouTube channel in about 3 weeks or so from today. Today is August 20th, 2021. So in early September, I have something super cool that will be on my YouTube channel, and I can't talk about it yet, but if you follow my channel for a while, you will be interested to see this. Well, thanks for listening, guys. This has been another episode of Almost Professional. I'm your host, Blake Calhoun, and I look forward to talking to you in the next episode.